This is your 20-minute podcast, where we do our best to give you useful information in 20 minutes or less. Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/your 20-minute podcast. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. Now, here's your host, David Brower.
Welcome back to your 20-minute podcast with David Brower. Our guest is Holly Brown. Holly lives with her husband and daughter in the San Francisco Bay Area, where she's a practicing marriage and family therapist. She's got a blog called Bonding Time, and it's featured on PsychCentral.com, a mental health website with 1.5 million visitors per month. So, hello, Holly, and welcome to Colorado, I guess, this morning.
Yes, hi, thank you.
How's the Bay Area today?
It's cold but beautiful. It's crystal clear, but it's cold for us. It's like in the 50s today.
There you go. Yeah, we had 72 yesterday, and it's 31 and snowing today. So there you go. So let's talk a little bit about what you do, practicing marriage and family therapist. What does that mean for us lay folks?
Yes, so it means that my work is focused on relationships. So whether like an individual or a couple or a family in the room, I'm generally thinking about the quality of their relationships and how to help them connect more to the people in their lives.
And you've got a ton of different therapies, if you will, or different topics, I guess is a better term, on your Bonding Time blog. And you have a lot of exposure to people with that, right?
Yes, I sort of see my blog as being, I'm more of a generalist in that I know that some of the blogs on Psych Central will be exclusively about a particular topic like bipolar, or, they'll be about one thing primarily. And I found that I had a lot of trouble sticking with one topic and posting regularly. So I wanted to just mostly think in terms of attachment issues, which is kind of the core of what I do, which is looking at the emotional bonds that we have with our family, with our friends, lovers. So I kind of draw from I kind of cast a wide net in terms of the topics. So within that.
And when you're talking about emotional bonds, that's families, it's friends, it's kids, it's parents, it's all kinds of different things, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Attachment theory looks at, from childhood, like the quality of the emotional bond with, the parents and the baby. So it starts from birth, really, in terms of their ability to get their emotional needs met and their physical needs, because babies have to cry kind of to get every need met. But so kind of the emotional responsiveness and the emotional engagement with caregivers is critical. And so they find through research that when you receive the kind of parenting, that the kind of caregiving where you can count on most of your needs being met most of the time, that tends to be considered a secure bond. It means that you feel like you can count on your parent, and you'll grow up feeling like you can count on people in the world. And so for people who didn't have that kind of experience, often their other relationships have to be kind of corrective experiences. So their relationships have to be a way to learn that, no, I really can trust people. And so that's one of the things that I focus on in my work, is how to create those kind of connections between, often couples is one of the main things, one of my main modalities, and so often looking at how to create that kind of connection between spouses.
Wow, that's amazing. And I'll tell you, my wife is a public health nurse. And so she goes door to door and takes care of newborn babies and moms on Medicaid. And so she provides a lot of resources for them. But that's one of the things that she always talks about is the ability to engage physically and emotionally with those young babies.
Yeah, it's really important. I mean, I think that mirroring, they say, it's very important for kids to kind of see themselves in the eyes of their parents. It's important for them to feel that they're worthwhile, and they're developing that sense of themselves from just incredibly young. And so that's wonderful work that your wife does.
It's amazing. And I, on the other hand, come from the other side of the spectrum that you mentioned, where only child, father was gone the majority of the time, didn't have really a lot of that bonding experience. And so it took me a couple of relationships and a lot of hard work really to kind of love myself, like myself, trust myself, so that I could do the same with other folks. Is that something that you run into a lot?
Yeah, that's exactly the kind of work I do. And the beautiful thing is that it can be done. It's like that you can sort of miss out on certain experiences and then sort of find a way to fill in the gaps for yourself as you go through life. And that's one of my favorite parts of being a therapist, is people being able to do what you just described, being able to kind of like, there's trial and error involved, and then, but then
Right,
you find,
right.
you find yourself, you find the relationship, and you sort of find yourself through the relationship.
One of the things I did, and I don't know if this makes any sense or not, but it certainly did for me at the time. As I was growing up and getting older, I always found myself wanting to do things for other people rather than myself. I was kind of put myself low on the totem pole. And then for my 50th birthday, I decided to make a list of 50 things to do for myself and give myself a year to do that. And I did everything but the very first thing I put on the list, which was a tattoo. So that's kind of funny. But well, eventually I did. Eventually I ended up getting 2 tattoos because they were both for very personal and emotional reasons. With one, my best friend passed away from cancer. And so before she passed, there were 6 of us in her circle that got a benevolence tattoo in her honor. And then when my son went to Afghanistan, he and I got tattoos before he left. So I think I was just waiting for the right tattoos.
Right, for the thing you wanted to be permanent.
Yeah. But it was amazing to me how focusing on myself for the first time in a long time and finding really beneficial ways to reach out and build that confidence and trust in my own self so I could do that with others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then I think that probably the more you have that, the stronger your bond is with other people too. So it's all like this positive feedback loop that can happen.
Absolutely. So when you deal with families, deal with individuals, how do you do that? Do they reach out to you? Do you have resources where you find them? How do you find your clientele, for lack of a better term?
Yeah, so I'm in private practice, so people find me. So I have a listing on Psychology Today and have my website. And so people reach out, and then we do sort of an initial phone consultation, and just to make sure that they're in the wheelhouse of what I do. And if they are, then they come in, and then we start getting to know each other, and I start getting to know their particular set of problems as they see them. And then I'm also looking at kind of a way to see them that's different, because I feel like if you just totally took people's narrative, then they wouldn't grow by seeing you. Like if you just kind of sat there going, yeah,
right,
that sounds about right, then they wouldn't really go very far.
Yeah.
So I think it's sort of figuring out what part of their story to build on and where to kind of create new ones, because I'm a big believer in the idea that we're shaping ourselves all the time with the stories that we tell. So, which is part of also being an author. I think that's where there's some intersection in the 2 parts of my professional life with, writing and with therapy. Is there's an interest in stories and the ways that we're always like creating, we're sort of creating ourselves and our lives.
Yeah, absolutely. When you write, have you got several books out now, or what do you have out there?
I do. So my 3rd one just came out in January, so last month.
And it is? Tell us about it.
It's called This Is Not Over, and it's the story of 2 very different women who meet after one stays in the other's vacation rental, so an Airbnb, VRBO type rental. And so the homeowner, Miranda, accuses the other woman, Dawn, of having left behind stained sheets. And she says that she's going to hold part of her security deposit for that. And there's sort of this war of words that begins, because Dawn is a person who, as you learn during the course of her book, has a history where feeling like she's been called dirty is it's just about the worst thing that she feels you can call her. And so she takes it in a deeply personal sense. And so there's kind of this like war that goes on between these women, and in large part I see it as being about kind of almost like an extended road rage, which is where you're trying to avoid the things you're really angry about by being angry at like almost like a safe target. But as the book goes on, it's really, they're not each other's safe target. So because it keeps escalating from there. But I was interested in the psychological dynamic of how someone that you don't know very well can push your buttons. Because I think we've all had experiences where we get really triggered by a person that we don't know well, and we're like coming up with, I wish I'd said this, or I really, she ought to know this, and we want to really prove our point. And I think it often has to do with projection, like not really dealing with the other things going on in our lives and wanting to project them onto this other person. And then there's also a social media element to the book where they see sort of images of each other's lives that spark a lot of envy, because Dawn is young and beautiful but not doesn't have much money and isn't very settled in her life, and Miranda is older and wealthier by being married to a wealthy man. And so they kind of see in each other the idea of what they think they want, that Miranda would like a do-over and to be young and beautiful, and that Dawn would like to be in a more established place in her life. And so I kind of am playing with the idea that social media and what we think we know about people exacerbates a lot of the feud that's going on between these particular women.
Boy, that's fascinating. How did you draw those characters out from different experiences with your clients, or you just have a very vivid imagination, or what was your draw to put these two women together?
Well, I think I started with the situation, which was based on a situation that happened to me where I had stayed in a rental and with my family, and I had a 3-year-old at the time, and I received an email from my host saying that I had left a child-sized gray stain on the sheets, and I was really I was really indignant. I had like a lot of righteous outrage. Like, I don't have a filthy child. I wouldn't have done that, And you must have made that up. Right. And we sort of fired back, a number of emails, and we were both really getting into it. We both really were like outraged with each other, and clearly wanted the other person to acknowledge that we were right. And so I think then we dropped it, but I think that what interested me about that was why we were in it when we were in it, like why, my husband would say, why are you writing back to this woman? And I'd say, oh, because I got to tell her this. And he would say, well, why did you tell her this? And I'd say, I don't know. And so it was kind of stepping away and then thinking, what kind of characters would keep going and keep going to the next level, and what characters could keep triggering each other, like in sort of this funny lock and key with their pathology, why they keep like pushing each other's buttons in this very specific way, and what they represent for each other. And so I had that situation, and then I sort of just brainstormed the psychology of these two women and the histories of them and how they would fit together. And the imagining at the beginning where I flesh out the psychologies of my characters is one of my favorite parts of the writing process. So I just kind of was thinking of what two women would inhabit these roles and these lives, and keep going one further.
Wow, what a fun story. It's like the last one that speaks wins, but wait, I'm not the last one.
Never be the last one. Yeah.
And triggers are fascinating to me, because what you think is a trigger oftentimes really is not. There might be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 triggers behind that are really the initiator, right?
There's sort of the when Freud was talking about the iceberg, right? And how like 90% of it, will be underwater, and so there's this little tip, which is the conscious part, and then the rest is like all of your subconscious. And I think that's true. I mean, I think that there's a lot of reactions that we're having that are like this, like primal. And it takes a lot of introspection and like investigation to figure out why did that matter to me in that way? Because by rights, that shouldn't matter to me at all. By rights, this woman, she took some money from me, and it's offensive, and I don't agree with it, but why am I still going? I think that my characters are trying to sort of figure out why they're still going, but they can't stop going, which I think is interesting to me in terms of my clients also, that there's a lot of times you get people to a place of great self-awareness, but it doesn't actually change the behavior. They still, it's almost compulsive. They feel they have to keep going, and that's the subconscious. And how to get into that, and how to make real change in something that's like largely driven by the subconscious is really fascinating.
Wow, that sounds like I'm fascinated by that book already. I'm going to pick it up because it really sounds good. Do you have any audiobooks, or are they just traditional books?
There is an audiobook. Yes.
For This Is Not Over?
Yeah, it was fun when my publisher sent me some voice samples of people so that I could say which one, sounded most like Miranda and which one sounded the most like Dawn. And it was funny how, just having lived with them in my head, how some voices very distinctly, I was like, that's not Dawn. And I'm sure the reader, right, that would be Dawn if that was the voice, of the audio. But to me, I had a voice in my head, and so it was fun trying to figure out who came closest.
I'm going to download that. I read a lot of audiobooks. In fact, my profession is I'm a voice actor, and so I do audiobooks. So I'm really intrigued by that story, and I'll be downloading it when we get done here today. What a great book.
I know. Now I want to interview you because I find voice acting to be a really fascinating profession. Actually, it's something I want to use in a book I write someday.
All right.
I'm interested in that profession.
I'd be wide open to that. It'd be fun.
Great.
Yeah.
I can pick your brain sometime.
Absolutely. My goal in life is to never have a real job ever again. So voice acting survives that for me. And you've got some other books there, Stay Gone, A Necessary End, Don't Try to Find Me. The titles alone sound fascinating. We don't need to go into a whole lot of detail about them, but just cursory-wise, again, I'm sure there's interesting personalities in those stories.
Yes. Yeah, building the psychology of my characters is really important to me. I think also coming from my other professional life, that feels especially important. Sometimes I'll read psychological thrillers that feel too light on the psychology to
Yeah.
me in terms of the characters don't feel vivid enough, in terms of the uniqueness of their psychology. So, yes, I think my other books, I think that's a strength. I like to think that's a strength.
Good for you. So if people want to reach out to you, I assume, and I much as I hate to assume, I assume your practice is more face-to-face, but is there a way for people to communicate with you and maybe share some of their issues and concerns?
Yes, so my practice is face-to-face. I know some people do Skype therapy and that type of thing. I feel like I rely so much on body language and the nonverbal cues that I'm concerned I would miss too much, so I don't do any Skype therapy. But if people are in the San Francisco Bay Area, then yes, I'm accepting new clients. I would love to try to see if we're a fit and to work with them. In terms of reaching out, they're free to send emails, but I'm not going to answer any involved questions about people's, experiences.
Yep.
Based on an email. So, but yeah, if people want to, people can always respond to, they can comment on the blog, or they can just send an email with a little more general stuff, or if they want to talk about the books. But if it's an actual, clinical question, it's not really responsible for me to get into, well, what did happen in your childhood?
I know, right? Exactly.
But yeah, but vaguer kind of inquiries or emails would be great. And then they can do that through my website, which is hollybrownbooks.com.
And then your Bonding Time blog is easy to reach too through, is that on your website too, I imagine, or?
Yes, I have the two different websites. So I have Holly Brown Books, which is for the novels, and then I have hollybrownmft.com. So that's Holly Brown and then MFT as in marriage, family therapist. .com, and that has a link also to my blog and also has my direct email. And the blog is on Psych Central, and as you mentioned, it's called Bonding Time.
Wow, that's terrific. What a great resource for a lot of people who aren't in the Bay Area. And of course, if you happen to be in the Bay Area, then you need to give Holly a connect and see if you're a good fit. I'm fascinated by what you do and how you do it, and this has been an extremely quick 20 minutes, which is always good for me because it means we actually had a nice conversation.
I agree. It was really great talking with you.
Holly, thank you so much, and I'm going to go download your book here in just a few minutes, so thank you.
Thank you.
All right. You've been listening to your 20-minute podcast with David Brower. Our special guest has been Holly Brown. We hope you enjoy the program. And come back to us. And be sure to follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/your 20-minute podcast.
Until next time, don't forget to download your free audiobook at audibletrial.com/your 20-minute podcast. That's audibletrial.com/your 20-minute podcast for your free audiobook. And thanks for listening to your 20-minute podcast with David Brower.